Recapping our SuperFlex PPR mock draft right now on Fantasy Football Today in 5. And what's up, everybody? Adam Azer and Jamie Eisenberg on FFT in 5. And we just did a 12-team full PPR draft with 3 receivers and a flex and a SuperFlex. So essentially, it's a 2-quarterback league. A little bit of a challenge because we don't have rookies. There's no Caleb Williams, no Drake May, no Jaden Daniels. And you're not going to be drafting guys like Sam Howell. So it did sort of thin the position a little bit. Not a lot of people have 3 trustworthy quarterbacks on their team. Anyway, Jamie, here's my question. Given the quarterback landscape and what we saw in this draft, this was a 12-team draft in a super flex league. Do you think it's better to have an early pick in the first round, a middle pick in the first round, or a late pick in the first round?
I think probably in the early part of the first round, if you're inclined to still get 2 top 20 quarterbacks. I like to get one of the top tier guys. I think I've kind of settled on not necessarily going quarterback. That has not worked well for me the last couple of years doing that. Last year, for example, I went with, I think it was Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa with my first 2 picks, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was Joe Burrow and Tua, but the rest of my team was terrible. Like, quarterbacks were fine when they were healthy, but the rest of my team was not great. And so I like the route I went this draft in particular, taking Lamar Jackson, then still getting 2 in round 3, but at least getting a running back that I think is going to be one of the best in Bijan Robinson, and how the draft unfolded for me that way, which you can read about on CBSSports.com and certainly watch on our YouTube page for the full length episode if you want the full draft board. But in any event, I don't necessarily love going quarterback. And I think, based on the 3 teams that I'm looking at here that did that, I don't necessarily love the way that their rosters came out, Dave being one of them.
Okay. He took Burrow and Love. One guy took Herbert and Purdy. One guy took Fields and Stroud. But I do think things have changed when we're looking at a super flex draft where only 3 teams took 2 quarterbacks with their first 2 picks. So, because it was only 3, I took Deshaun Watson as my QB2 in round 4. I was happy about that. Jared Goff was a round 4 pick. Trevor Lawrence was a round 4 pick. He was the first pick of round 4. So Baker Mayfield was a round 5 pick. Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Will Levis. And then if you wanted a guy like Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, they were round 7 picks. And then,
I think if you look at it, the teams that sort of spaced out their quarterbacks a little bit, like the team picking at number 5 took Kyler Murray in round 2 as their first quarterback, Jared Goff as their second quarterback in round 4. Sandwich that with Christian McCaffrey and Kyron Williams. Still ended up getting Jalen Waddle, Travis Kelce, George Pickens, Chris Scott. Like, that's to me a very solid team and how that build unfolded. Your team, I think, ended up, very solid. I know I was giving you a hard time on the show, but that's just obviously more for shtick. I think your team ended up very solid in how you built yours. You mentioned the Baker Mayfield team. Love that one. Patrick Mahomes in round 1, then Jahmyr Gibbs, Stephon Diggs, Brandon Ayuk, Baker Mayfield, and then Calvin Ridley as his third receiver with George Kittle led tight end, and still got Brian Robinson as a second running back, which I think is going to be a little underrated based on how it performed. So again, I like the way that build unfolded. Again, by comparison to some of the teams that I think just went heavy quarterback early, and you could critique mine as well because I went heavy quarterback early, still to an extent. With I was the only one that had I was the only one that went 2 quarterbacks through round 3 that did not go quarterback. So still with a heavy quarterback build, if you want to look at it that way. But I just didn't love the way that the teams that went quarterback necessarily unfolded with some of the holes that they have at other positions.
Yeah, you took Drake London, who's getting a new offense. You took Terry McLaurin, who's getting Cliff Kingsbury. Did you see anything in this draft that kind of reflected new offensive coordinators? And do you think there are big winners and losers as we see a lot of hirings over the last few days we haven't really talked about?
Well, I think we got to see the quarterbacks in some of those situations. So I'm excited for a quarterback upgrade in Atlanta, which I think will unlock the potential of Drake London, which is why I took him as my second receiver. In the case of Terry McLaurin, I think same thing. He's been one of these sort of undervalued performers, overvalued potential drafters. I think people have drafted him a little bit too soon, but he's one of those guys that I'll put in the category, and we've seen the changes. I said this about Stephon Diggs. If he goes to a team that can, feature him, he'll be great. That happened. Same thing with DJ Moore. It happened. And I think Terry McLaurin's kind of that next guy. So hopefully the quarterback change and coaching change there will help him. I made the pick of Najee Harris. Again, the value was very good in round 9, but I do think that Arthur Smith going there will help. George Pickens going in round 7, maybe a little bit too soon, but not necessarily the round, but by the receivers that were going around him. So that's going to be something I think we keep an eye on. Dave talked about this with DK Metcalf. I actually talked to Metcalf at the Pro Bowl, asked him about, having another offense coordinator. He said, this is going to be my third coordinator change. And I think it's now 5 years he's been in the league. This is going to year 6. So he's had to adjust to this quite a bit, but we've seen it work out in several cases. Obviously Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield and, Rashad White, those guys benefited greatly with a coordinator change last year in Tampa Bay. So it can go, a number of different directions for how these guys perform with a new system. So I wouldn't necessarily view it until we see the whole picture, once the quarterbacks are in place on those teams.
It's Jamie Eisenberg. I'm Adam Azer. This has been Fantasy Football Today in 5. Talk to you later.